The summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations has kicked off in Cambodia. The three-day summit in the capital city, Phnom Penh, will also include the East Asia Summit. Now, this time, the 10-nation bloc faces a multitude of issues, including the escalating crisis in Myanmar, with increasingly frustrated members of the group struggling to get the country's junta to comply with an agreed peace plan. Several ASEAN members have blamed Myanmar's military rulers for failing to implement a peace plan, which was jointly agreed last year. The junta has meanwhile blamed a lack of progress on the pandemic and obstruction from armed resistance movements that it calls terrorists. Now, apart from this, the heightened rivalry between the US and China and the disputes in the South China Sea will also find their mention in the talks. At the opening ceremony of the ASEAN Summit, the Cambodian Prime Minister, who is the current bloc chair, said that the regional grouping is at its most certain juncture. The world leaders from across Asia and beyond, including US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, are expected to participate in the various regional forums. Now, the global leaders will discuss ways to enhance bilateral cooperation and economic partnership. The string of summits and bilateral sideline meetings also marks the start of a rare flurry of high-profile conferences across the region this month. Indonesia will host the Group of 20 summit in Bali next week, followed by the Asia Economic Cooperation meeting in Bangkok. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Nathan Paul, who is a journalist from Cambodia. Thank you for being with us, Nathan. Now, the ASEAN Summit has kicked off in Cambodia. What are the key issues that will dominate the three-day summit?
Myanmar is certainly at the top of the agenda. The conflict is growing beyond control. It's not just stagnating, but it's escalating. It's an incredibly deadly civil war, but it's also a growing humanitarian crisis that could have massive run-on impacts to the region with flows of refugees as well. As you mentioned, the South China Sea will play a big role. This is an opportunity for Joe Biden to try to make inroads back into the Asia-Pacific region, which has been more of a neglected policy area for the US the last few years. But one issue that probably won't be getting enough attention, which really should, is the fact that there are tens of thousands of slaves being held inside large compounds throughout Cambodia, Laos and Myanmar, forced to commit online cyber scams. This has government complicity involved in Cambodia, Myanmar and Laos, and I really hope that some of the world leaders use as an opportunity to ask what is going on with this and to find some kind of concerted effort to stop it.
Right on this, Nathan, as you mentioned, the crisis in Myanmar is going to be very high on this year's agenda. Many ASEAN leaders are upset that the military government has not implemented the agreed peace plan. What can we expect from the bloc's discussion on this issue on Myanmar?
I don't think you can expect a great deal that will actually result in progress, unfortunately. The leadership of the Tatmadaw is not welcome at the ASEAN Summit this year, but the ASEAN countries in general don't tend to get involved in other countries' affairs too closely. So there will be some pressure. That pressure is mostly from the United States and from European partners, where the financial blacklisting has come into Myanmar, which will make it incredibly difficult for money to move through the country, for the generals to be able to sustain an economy inside Myanmar. But fundamentally, all that's going to really do is move Myanmar further and further into being a full narco state, with the illicit economy propping it up. The Tatmadaw has been fine for decades, having the country be a pariah state that's neglected or even forgotten about. They're very comfortable with a conflict situation, and its regional partners are unlikely to really push for this to end. So I don't see the conflict going anywhere soon, and I see it being a situation that the Myanmar Tatmadaw will actually be quite happy with.
Right, Nathan, thank you very much for being with us and bringing us all the latest details coming out of that summit.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.